When I met with my composer Matt Hackett to put together the music for the film, what I envisioned was not your typical film score, but I wanted something that kind of evoked the sound of David Shire or Dave Grusin with some of the movies that they scored back in the day, particularly David Shire with All the President's Men and The Conversation. So I wanted like simple piano sounds and even sometimes some disturbing synthesizer moments because I really didn't want this movie to feel, again, like it's a kid's movie. It's not a movie that's simply just about bullying. I think that's a misconception that people get. There's so many more layers when it comes to the underlying racial component of the story, the mental health issue, and the politics that go on with these school administrations that all kind of get wrapped up in a story that's really more about social injustice than just the simple actual bullying tale. I also knew I needed an extra element to really hone down those points. And so Konstantin Sovietsky, he was somebody I worked with as an actor on my second film, Dishonorable Vendetta, and, is clearly an incredible pianist from Russia. He was the guy I was going to go to about that. So Konstantin actually provided a couple of piano tracks in the film, but the one that really stands out the most was what I consider to be the main title theme. Not the title in the credits, but what you hear at the end of the movie. Because I told him I wanted something that was tragic, but also uplifting. And he created a 2-minute piece that when I first heard it, I wanted to cry. I really felt like it had this sense of what's going on, what's this sadness, but then also having the hope that maybe things are going to turn around for the better for TK, for Vance, maybe for society at large, but that's going to take time. Maybe we never get there, but little steps, little impacts on the world, that's what counts. And I think Konstantin was able to match that perfectly with his music. Normally I do the typical end title cards like I do on every film that I make. But because this movie was so special, I knew I needed to do something different. And one thing I felt, even in the writing process, was thinking about the audience and kind of wondering, would they believe this story if it was true? Because clearly this was based on real events. I thought it would be more interesting if we found actual news stories. So I found many of the ones that inspired me to write the film and even recent events and put together a collage over the end credit sequence to try to show people this type of activity that happened in this film is really going on in public schools, in private schools, universities, even middle schools. And so it wasn't just to end the film on the note of what happens with TK and Vance, but more importantly, what's still going on now and trying to press the issue so that maybe the audience could come out of it feeling like something's got to get done. People need to speak out. And especially when you do witness an injustice, you don't sit down. You don't go take your phone and put it up on TikTok. You got to speak out. You got to call it out for what it is because somebody's life will depend on it. The premiere we had in Philadelphia was just unbelievable. The first time seeing it with an audience, there were almost no reactions until the very end when everybody applauded. And they didn't even applaud until after the montage of the news clippings, after the credits. It just was something where even in the Q&A talk back, there was so many emotions and so much sadness, anger, even people coming up to me and telling me their stories of things that they went through. It didn't matter what their race was or their gender. They told me, yeah, I went through this and I suppressed it for a very long time. Your movie made me think. Your movie actually brought those memories back and made me feel like I want to do something. I want to speak out. And so I felt like maybe there's something more to this than just any other film that I've ever done. That it's not just about exposure, but trying to get a message out to tell a story.
I just really hope that they're kind of looking at students and faculty in education in a different light, because education is like the most pivotal part of one's childhood. And to see that in a different light and hopefully integrate a better system in schools, I feel like that's going to be very beneficial, not only for faculty, but for adolescents, because it's their time to grow up. And yeah, it's your most pivotal moments.
I hope that people take away and have the knowledge that this is a problem and that they need to talk to their kids about it. They need to address how they can prevent it. Like I said, just it starts in the house. So where's that exposure coming from, and how can we prevent that?
Be a better person. Don't judge people. Everybody's got issues. Everybody's got problems. Everybody's just trying to make a living and get by. You know, we just all want to survive.
I would just hope they take away, that this is a real problem and it's happening, and it's not something that just happened in the past. It's still happening and probably will happen for years to come, and how we handle that can make a huge difference.
So I think it's a lesson not just with, the students or the kids, but also the people that are surrounded by these students and by these kids, and how they have to really speak up for them, or something bad, unfortunately, could happen.
If you can have a story that speaks to kids of color, it's so much better than just having a teacher say, well, if you're being bullied, you can, well, that's true. And that's great. And that's absolutely necessary. But if you can actually connect through art, through film, and actually see somebody that you can personally relate to going through a like experience, all for the better. It's an important issue. And I'm very glad as a teacher, as a parent, that this project was being done.
Even if they don't have a child who's bullied in school, they still have a responsibility as a parent. They still have a responsibility as part of our society to be an advocate, to help in any way that they can bring bullying to the forefront and start to really impact and maybe implement some school policies that are a little bit more rigid in addressing these issues.
I'm a very private person in my own life, and I don't ever get so deep into sometimes the negative things that go on, because I know sometimes people don't want to hear that stuff, and especially when people are trying to get back to their lives after COVID, after the tensions of 2020, that they just want to move on. They want to put the past behind them, go to work, support their families, and just be happy. And I feel the same in many respects as well. But I also know I get those nightmares. Sometimes I get that trauma from what I went through. And I felt like this film was a way to therapeutically deal with those matters that I've been having to face for most of my life. And I know it's not something that just gets resolved overnight, and certainly the way that this film ends, nothing's ever fully ever resolved. I don't see this movie ending bullying. I don't see this movie ending racism. What I do see is the impact it can have on somebody that is going through a situation like I did, who could see this and know you're not the only one going through it, and that there are people like Miss Vance out there that can go above and beyond to get to the truth, to exonerate, and more importantly, to tell that person that they're special, that they can accomplish anything, that they can change their world if they're in a place of hell. And that's what I wanted to convey. This is not simply just a bullying story, and it's not a kid's movie, and it is certainly not a political agenda. This is a simple human story about going to the extent of speaking out when there's an injustice, and especially racial injustice that happens to young people in this country, and having to see that get swept under the rug, not addressed, sometimes just ignored, and just everybody has to move on because it's what's in the best interest of the status quo. No, we have to stop sometimes and realize life is more than a paycheck. Life is certainly more than just getting through the day. It's about helping that next person, the next generation that has to grow up and try to make our world better. one day at a time, one step at a time, one person at a time. And so that to me is what drove me to make this film, what motivated me to tell my story, and most of all, just to make something that I felt I could look back at years from now, share it with my own kids one day, and say, hey, I went through this trauma, I went through this pain, and I got through it because I found a way to believe in myself, and I found through my art how I could express my truth, my story. And it doesn't matter if not everybody believes it. It doesn't matter if there are people out there who will hold me and tell me it's going to be okay. I know it's my responsibility to give back. This is the way I'm giving back, by sharing my story and to tell people that they're not alone, and that you need to be proud of who you are. Be proud of your skin color. Be proud of who you love. Be proud of what you are capable of in this world, because we're not promised anything tomorrow. So we got to make things matter today for ourselves and for that next generation. That's what Vance is trying to do, to bring the light to the darkness, to not let it simmer, and not let this kid live in fear for the rest of his life. That to me is what Dismissal Time is about. It is not a bullying story. It is not even a political story. It's a human rights story.